Good morning, everyone. This is Diane Murray at Southern Art Gallery. And today we are working on this painting of this Confederate Rose for a class I'm teaching. And I'd just like to point out something quickly here. I've noticed that my students don't seem to re-wet their paints enough. When you re-wet your paints, they need to glisten and they need to look wet. If you don't re-wet your paints, then you may as well be painting with acrylics, because the joy of watercolor is this beautiful, soft, transparent effect that we get through water. Water is the secret medium, of course, of watercolor. And you have to have enough water to make the pigment move around and do what you want it to do. So there's a fine line between re-wetting your palette too much or not enough. So I suggest you practice this. And I use either a spray bottle like this, or I have my students use one of these, which is an old hair color bottle. And that puts down a nice amount of water. This is easier to control than this. So if you have trouble with water control, I suggest you use something like this, or a little bottle like this. It has a little lid that you can actually lock. These are really neat. You can find these in the travel section, I think, of most stores. So anyway, that's something I wanted to discuss. So we're just getting ready to paint here, and we've taken the painting to this level. We've done an underpainting. I've done the background, which I'm satisfied with at this point. I may not be satisfied with it later on, but so far so good. So basically we've mapped in the colors. We've done a soft layer of the different shades so that I have an idea of where to go. I've already masked out the highlights that I want to save. And I did that with a ruling pen, which is another question my students had. What is a ruling pen? And they're kind of hard to find, but if you can find one, I think they're a drafting tool, but this little screw right here controls the thickness of how much paint and how much masking fluid you pick up. So it's really a nice little device for getting very fine lines in your masking. So onward with that, we will start mixing up our colors again. And this time, since we're going for a slightly thicker wash and a little more vibrant colors, we'll put in a little more vibrant, that's quinacridone magenta. So we'll pull out the same colors we've been using, just with a little more pigment added. Here's your cerulean blue, which I photoshopped this this photo that I took of this Confederate Rose. It's actually a white flower, but I wanted my students to see the options that you have in a white flower. Obviously, if you painted a white flower totally white, you wouldn't have a painting you wouldn't have a painting because you just leave the white paper. So I like pushing the colors and actually making it more vibrant and exciting. So this is quinacridone magenta with cerulean blue to get us these lovely lavender shades. So that's on the warm side. If I want it more on the cool side, I'll just add more blue to it and push it slightly to the cool side. Such a gorgeous color. And then we do have some yellows in here, although the yellows are very, very soft. So to keep the yellow soft, okay, my palette was dirty there, so we've kind of gone to a green, but I kind of like that because I don't want it to be a vibrant yellow. So I think I'm going to try that and see how that works. And I actually see that color over here as well. We also need to take a little more lemon yellow and a little more cerulean blue and make a soft green that we're going to use over here. And just, if you want it, of course, to be lighter, you just add more water. And I think I want it a little bit bluer than that. And I always mix my colors up ahead of time. I like that. That'll be nice. Remembering that your colors are going to dry lighter than what you're seeing on the palette. So, I think we will start maybe here. And I think we will wet the petal first to keep it soft. So starting with this petal, just wet the whole thing. And if you're gentle, it won't lift up the underlying layers unless you really work hard to scrub it. That's not going to happen. So let's take this green mix and just darken these places that are a little bit darker. In between where you see the lines, that's the masking fluid, so those are going to be lighter. So we'll put the darker next to the lighter. We're actually we have a really dark spot right here, which is going to migrate down, so we'll just come back in with that later. Okay, and then I see some of that green in this petal, which is rolling over here. And then we'll just soften that with clean water. Because this is, and we'll go over this dark area again here. I build my layers gradually most of the time, especially when you're painting something so delicate as these flowers. There's that green. Okay, and I just realized I did this instead of darkening that. So let's go back in there and darken this. The reason I keep my finger on the photo when I'm painting something complicated like this is because it is so easy to get lost. And trust me, it happens all the time to me, so I have to be very careful. Okay, now we've got this really dark shadow up under here. And the more you build these darks, the more you'll be able to see what you need to do to, that's a very lavender right there, to emphasize things on the petals to give them life. And there's a tiny dark right in there. Okay. This is a really tiny dark, well, not so tiny, but that's a dark in there. And that one's pretty much there. Okay, over here, under here, we haven't established this dark yet. Actually, I think it's this one right here. And it goes over here. So we'll just do that. And then there's a shadow part to here as well. Comes down on this leaf. Okay. Then we have a very much of a green, which I actually am going to take that off. I don't know why I masked that right there, because that's this shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that little place if I can. right there without removing too much on everything else, so that I can drop that green in there. And that's looking more blue than green. Probably when you're doing this, if you want a tighter painting, you should use a synthetic brush rather than this. This is an imitation squirrel, but it's still very soft. And I like painting with these soft brushes because it forces me to be looser, because I tend to paint too tightly, I think. That's actually where that was. I had that wrong. That was not what I thought. It's this. That's that little spot right there. Okay. So see, it's easy to get confused. And if you do, it's not the end of the world. It's just, that's the one that needs to be green. It's just, you can always change it and correct it. So look how much greener and bluer and cooler it is down here and up here, and how much warmer it is in the center of the flower, which is, I think, why I was so attracted to this this particular picture that I took, because it's such a beautiful contrast. So let's get some more cerulean blue. And we see this very dark right here. So we've got this blue that comes down here. That comes in there. And if you don't get every undulation here just right, it's not a big deal. But that is a little one I wanted to save right there. So the great thing about flowers is there's no really right or wrong way with a flower. It's going to look like a flower pretty much whatever you do. Give it a whole layer of blue, and then we'll come back in and darken that some more. And then we have a really dark here, which we will put in there and here. Actually, it doesn't go there, it goes here. See how easy that was to correct? That's why I always keep a paper towel handy, because it just makes it easier and you don't have to worry about making mistakes. That's the other reason I like for my students to paint on these boards, because even though they're not archival and they're not something you would really use if you were selling your art, they're wonderful for practice, because they allow you to make mistakes and then to correct them. And that's more blue in here, but it's a pale blue, so this is all in shadow here. That's more of a purple there. And this is fairly loose the way I'm painting this. If I were going to do this much tighter, I would go petal by petal, and then I would adjust each petal with by wetting it first and then going in and dropping what I wanted in there. Trying to get just the tiniest little touch of lavender right there. And the more we build this, the more contrast we find here. Okay, I am seeing that there should have been a light area right here, which I have lost. So I'm just going to scrub this back. And this is why I love this little 3/8 inch Master's Touch flat brush. It doesn't have to be a Master's Touch. It doesn't matter. It's a good lifting brush. It's synthetic. It's a cheap synthetic lifting brush, basically. And that's why I like it. But any flat brush, small flat brush will do for you. So you can just go back in and reclaim things that you have lost. As long as you keep it clean. See, it brings it right back to the white of the paper. Isn't that amazing that you can do that?